Happy Mother's Day. I want to tell you the story about when I first began being a midwife, how it all happened. I want to bring this up because of the fact that this is Mother's Day. And for everybody out there that has a child, whether you be a father, a mother, in a gay relationship, whatever family unit you're in, we all have the capacity to be nurturing and to be mothers. When I started to go into home birth, I had already had two of my own babies at home. The first one was born on a commune called the farm. I was 17, and it was done by spiritual midwives, is what they called themselves. And I really, really resonate with that because having a baby, being in a family, is all a very spiritual act. And so what happened was is I had my first son when I was 17 on this commune. And they taught me all about the beauty of birth, the sanctity of birth, and how important it was for the family. So when I had my baby at home in Austin, Emmy, 2 years later, her birth was the culmination in 1979. I was 19 that I realized I wanted everybody to have the type of birth that I've had combined with my son, which led me then to volunteer in two different organizations, and that was teaching me how to be a midwife. Now, this is a lay midwife. Lay midwives are midwives that have book studies, that study, that learn by other midwives and by going to birthings and different prenatal visits. And those are the types of midwives that I had to deliver my babies. And those are what we call the granny midwives. So I guess by now, since I'm a grandmother of three, I'm a granny midwife. Well, Debbie and Larry were my first couple, and they were the ones that taught me so much about this particular day and family. Let's call it Family Day. I was asked to do their birth by Jane, who was the nurse midwife, who had actually had 6 years of schooling to become a nurse and a midwife and worked at the clinic, and introduced me to Debbie and Larry. And I'd been studying for about a year and said to me, hey, Debbie and Larry are having their baby at home without anyone. And so we figured that you would be better than anyone to be with them. And I thought, wow, I mean, really, wow, thanks. And Debbie was about 9 months pregnant. And so I spoke with a couple of other midwife friends of mine. And so we decided, yeah, let's do this thing. So I was the one called for the birth. It was midnight. And I remember driving probably 15 minutes down the highway, and I was scared to death. I'm telling you. I mean, I knew the books. I'd helped other ladies have babies in the hospitals naturally, other things like that, taught classes, but I'd never really been the midwife. And I walked into this beautiful room where all the lights are down at home. And the little girls were there. The two little siblings were there. And Larry, her husband, was there rubbing her back. And I had about enough time to say hello to Debbie, to touch her belly as she was having a contraction. And then, with that being said, I saw the baby and I put my gloves on. And within about a minute and a half, I had a baby in my hands. And this baby was beautiful boy baby, crying and red and just vivacious and so happy to be there. And I cleaned off his little face. I wrapped him in beautiful blankets and covers. I gave him to Debbie and Larry, and he began to breastfeed. And the rest is medical. And we'll talk about that another time. However, I find it so enchanting that as my calling as a midwife, it was so confirmed by being asked to do a birth, walking in as the baby comes straight into my hands, and Larry and Debbie being awesome people. And they taught me the meaning of mothers, fathers, and family. Currently, we have a hospital institution that makes us think that our bodies are ill when we're pregnant, which is totally not what's happening. Our bodies are doing what's normally they're supposed to do, procreate. And we have a very wimpy foundation of getting started having children. We're not feeling any pain. We have monitors on. Our babies are taken from us, footprinted, given vaccinations, had tubes down their throat and everything before they are given to the mom to bond, to breastfeed with the father. Now that's pretty freaky, I would think, for this baby, that if you ever look at a newborn baby, they look around like, wow. Everything's like, wow, right? They've never seen any of it before, and it's probably light. And don't let them tell you that a baby does not feel pain, because I have been there when circumcisions have occurred many times, and trust me, that baby feels pain. Have you ever pinched a baby or even scratched a baby accidentally and it starts to cry? They feel pain. And they have a perfect focus where the baby holding like this, it's perfect as to the sight of how the baby can see. The baby can see you at this point, this amount of sight. And so here I have with me what I would call a cradle. It would be also something I would call a very firm foundation. And by having your babies at home, and by giving your body, your family, your pregnancy, your baby, the honor, the spiritual honor of being birthed in a safe atmosphere, in a beautiful bonding situation, we have the hope for a future of children that are born on a much more healthy, focused foundation, which is bonding, family bonding. And with that being said, home births nurture this type of foundation to start a family's life off. Whereas we go into the hospital, it's pretty flimsy, whimsy, surgical, cesarean, which leads to fear, which leads to harsh healing, which leads to a flaky foundation. I'd also like to add that when you see your doctor, usually you do not get the doctor you like. You get the doctor that is on call for the night when you go into labor or the day, because usually you'll be induced. Another topic we'll talk about. See where that foundation is whimsy. You see the doctor for 10 minutes every month while you're pregnant. You don't discuss nutrition. You don't discuss, how's it going at home. Nothing. Flimsy foundations, and our children grow up in a flimsy, fearful space. I can tell you from what I have seen is that the mothers that are prepared, whether they go into the hospital or not, or have their babies at home or not, have done a lot more reading, a lot more studying, as well as the family and their classes too, to begin a firm foundation to bond that family together in more healthier environments. This is true. Happy Mother's Day. Thanks for listening.